What happens when grace meets provocation? When the calmest voice in Hollywood refuses to stay silent. It began like any other morning on The View. Cameras rolled, lights shimmered off the sleek studio set, and the audience clapped with that practiced enthusiasm. Half excitement, half caffeine. But beneath the smiles and bright colors, there was a tension you could almost feel through the screen. Jessica Chastain, Oscar-winning actress, activist, and known for her measured composure, was there to promote her new film, a drama about moral compromise and personal integrity. A fitting topic, though no one expected that same theme would spill off the script and into real life before the hour ended. Sunny Hostin leaned forward, eyes sharp with the kind of curiosity that can cut if you're not ready. "Jessica," she began, voice smooth but deliberate, "you've built a reputation as someone who speaks about moral accountability in Hollywood. But some people think you only use that voice when it's safe, when it won't cost you anything. How do you respond to that?" A murmur ran through the studio. Joy Behar turned slightly, lips parting in surprise. Whoopi raised her brow but stayed silent. It was the kind of question that teetered between journalism and jab. Jessica didn't answer right away. She smiled politely, but her fingers, clasped in her lap, gave her away, tight, almost trembling. The audience waited. "I think," Jessica said finally, her voice calm but edged with meaning, "that moral accountability shouldn't depend on convenience. But it also shouldn't be used as a weapon to question someone's sincerity." There it was, the shift. The studio air thickened. Sunny tilted her head. "But isn't it fair to ask if Hollywood voices like yours speak out only when the topic fits your brand?" Jessica's gaze flickered. For a split second, she looked wounded, then resolute. "Sunny, I think that's an unfair assumption. When I talk about moral courage, I'm not branding myself. I'm risking being misunderstood. That's part of what honesty costs." The crowd clapped, uncertain whether to cheer or gasp. Whoopi leaned forward, sensing the current. "And if you're watching this moment unfold right now, you can feel it too, that spark where truth and pride collide. Before the next turn, hit that subscribe button on Talk Narrative and join the growing community that dives deep into the most explosive, revealing moments in entertainment. Don't just watch the story, be part of it. Like, comment, and tell us whose side you're on, because what happens next will make that decision a lot harder." Back in the studio, Sunny crossed her legs, keeping her tone deceptively casual. "I just think," she said, "that sometimes actors talk about moral issues until they conflict with the business side of things. Like, if a studio does something questionable, but it's the studio giving you work, do you still speak up?" Jessica's lips parted slightly. That question wasn't about the movie anymore. It was about her. Everyone could feel it. "I have," Jessica replied softly. "I've walked away from projects before because I couldn't stand by the people involved. That's not something I promote, it's something I live with." The audience burst into a ripple of applause. But Sunny didn't flinch. She pressed again. "So, when you worked with producers who were later accused of misconduct, was that before or after you decided to take a stand?" A collective inhale swept through the studio. Joy Behar muttered under her breath, "Whoa." Jessica blinked, stunned by the bluntness. "Sunny, I think you're implying something I don't deserve," she said, her tone trembling between restraint and fire. "No one can predict the future or other people's actions. What matters is how you respond when you do know." Sunny nodded, but there was a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "I'm not implying. I'm just asking questions. Isn't that what accountability looks like?" Jessica took a breath, long and steady. "Accountability doesn't mean humiliation," she said. "It means owning your choices, without having to defend your humanity every time someone doubts it." The audience cheered again, louder this time, breaking the tension for a heartbeat. But when it faded, the silence was even sharper. Whoopi finally interjected, her deep voice anchoring the storm. All right, let's all breathe for a second. Jessica's here to talk about her film, but I think what she's saying goes beyond that. It's about how much of ourselves we owe the world's opinion." Jessica nodded slowly, grateful for the bridge, though her expression carried something else now, hurt mixed with conviction. She looked at Sunny again, her voice quieter but more cutting. "It's interesting," she said, "how often women who talk about ethics are accused of being performative. I don't see the same question thrown at men." The studio erupted in applause, this time pure and unrestrained. The sound rolled like thunder. Sunny forced a smile. "I'm just holding everyone to the same standard, Jessica." "Then maybe start with listening," Jessica replied. The words hit the table like glass shattering. Joy turned away, whispering, "Oh my God." For a moment, the women stared at each other. The actress who stood for moral authenticity and the host who prided herself on unflinching candor. Neither blinked. The camera caught Jessica's face in close-up, every emotion raw and visible. The flash of anger, the shimmer of disappointment, and something deeper, a sorrow that comes from being misunderstood for the very values you stand for. Sunny shifted in her seat, caught between professionalism and pride. The tension wasn't about politics or career. It was about the invisible line between calling out and calling off. The producer's voice echoed faintly from off-camera. 30 seconds. But 30 seconds in that silence felt eternal. Jessica finally spoke, quieter than before, but every word cutting through the air like a violin string. It's easy to talk about accountability, Sunny. It's harder to live it without turning it into a spectacle. The studio fell still. Even Sunny's expression softened, her eyes flickering as if she realized the edge had gone too far. Then came the applause, slow at first, then thunderous. The audience rose to their feet, clapping not just for Jessica's composure, but for something they recognized in themselves. That moment when you refuse to let someone twist your truth. Sunny leaned back, her smile tight, voice steady but her eyes unreadable. "Fair point," she said. "Fair point." As the cameras panned out, Jessica's gaze lingered, not on Sunny, not on the hosts, but on the audience. Her face said what her words didn't. That hurt. But it also said, "I'm still standing." The closing music played softly under the tension, and the studio lights dimmed just slightly as the view shifted to applause. No one spoke for a full minute. When the cameras stopped rolling, Jessica exhaled slowly, like she had just walked through a storm without an umbrella. Sunny adjusted her notes, eyes down, pretending to read something that wasn't there. In that unspoken silence, something fundamental had shifted, not just between them, but in the air around that table. It wasn't about fame or image anymore. It was about boundaries, about the cost of holding on to your truth when someone else tests it in front of the world. And though the audience would never see that moment between takes, the quiet aftermath of confrontation, it was there. Real, fragile, human. Because sometimes the loudest battles aren't the ones shouted. They're the ones endured. The applause had ended, but the silence that followed was louder than any ovation. Jessica sat back in her chair, her expression still polite, but her heartbeat betrayed her calm. She could feel it pounding against her ribs as the credits rolled and the lights above dimmed slightly. The camera crew began their quiet shuffle, adjusting cables and whispering into earpieces, pretending not to have witnessed what everyone had just felt. Sunny stood up first, smooth as ever, collecting her cards. Her face was unreadable, a perfect anchor mask, but her eyes flicked toward Jessica for a fleeting second, just long enough to let a question hang between them. "Did I go too far? Or did you just expose me for it?" Jessica smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides a bruise. "Good talk," she said, her tone neutral, but her voice barely concealing the tremor of restrained emotion. Sunny nodded. "Always good to have you here." The words were professional, but they carried no warmth. Whoopi stayed seated, eyes following both women as they parted. "Well," she muttered under her breath. "That was something." Joy Behar turned to her, still wide-eyed. "I thought they were going to break the table in half," she whispered, shaking her head. But the cameras were off now. No filters, no pretenses. Just the faint hum of stage lights and the rustle of a shaken crew. Jessica was escorted backstage by a producer. A young woman in a headset who couldn't quite look her in the eye. "You were incredible out there," she said softly, almost apologetically. "That got intense fast." Jessica smiled politely again, still in the performance of composure. That's one word for it. Inside, her thoughts were anything but calm. The question kept replaying in her head. "Do you only speak up when it's safe?" It wasn't just a line, it was an accusation. One that cut deeper because, in some dark corner of her mind, she had asked herself the same thing. Back in the makeup room, Jessica sat in front of the mirror. Her reflection looked back at her. Perfect hair, flawless skin, calm eyes. But she didn't recognize the woman staring back. It wasn't the camera-ready face that bothered her. It was the flash of doubt behind it. She thought about all the times she had spoken up, against inequality, against abuse, against hypocrisy. She remembered the backlash, the late-night messages warning her to pick her battles. She remembered the men who told her she was too emotional, the executives who stopped calling, the colleagues who quietly distanced themselves. And still, somehow, it wasn't enough. Not for people like Sunny. She could feel the heat rise in her chest. Why is it that women can't talk about morals without being accused of having an agenda? She whispered to herself. Her publicist, Dana, entered the room quietly, phone in hand. Jess, that clip's already trending. Jessica turned sharply. What clip? The exchange, Dana said, eyes darting between screens. Twitter's lit up. Half the people are saying you handled it with grace. The other half think Sunny exposed you as fake. Jessica's breath caught. Fake, Dana sighed. You know how it is. People love watching women fight. They don't care who's right. Jessica stared at the mirror again, her reflection now harder, sharper. The moral clarity she'd walked in with now felt shaken. Maybe that's the problem, she said quietly. We've taught people to mistake confrontation for truth. Meanwhile, a few rooms away, Sunny Hostin sat in the green room scrolling through her phone. The comments were pouring in. Sunny's just doing her job. She went too far. Finally, someone challenged Hollywood hypocrisy. Jessica handled that with class. She set her phone down, exhaling deeply. Every time, she muttered. Every time I ask a tough question, I'm the villain. Sarah Haynes peeked in from the hallway. You okay? Sunny shrugged. I did what I always do, asked the hard question. Sarah hesitated. Yeah, but that one hit different. You looked angry. Sunny frowned. Because I was. You ever notice how these celebrities talk about standing for truth? But the minute you ask how far they're willing to go, it's suddenly too personal. Sarah didn't answer. She just gave a small, sympathetic nod. You might want to call her later. People felt that tension. Sunny waved her off. She'll be fine. She's an actress. They know how to handle emotion. But her tone betrayed a flicker of guilt, one she quickly smothered. Back in the hallway, Jessica was leaving. Her coat was slung over her arm, her team walking beside her like a small army. Every few steps, another assistant whispered something about social media, PR angles, or potential statements. Jessica barely heard them. Her mind was elsewhere, on the question that had pierced her so deeply. Not because it came from Sunny, but because it came from a woman who should have understood better. She paused near the exit door and turned to Dana. Don't post anything yet. No comments. Not until I figure out what this really was. Dana frowned. What do you mean? Jessica looked toward the hallway leading back to the stage. That wasn't journalism. That was judgment. And yet, as she said it, another part of her, a quieter, honest part, wondered if Sunny had simply voiced what the world already whispered. Outside, the November wind was sharp. Paparazzi waited behind metal barricades, their cameras flashing like lightning in a storm. Jessica, over here. What happened between you and Sunny? Are you two okay? Did she cross a line? Jessica shielded her eyes, forcing a small smile. No comment, she said, her voice soft but final. Then she slipped into her car, shutting the door behind her like closing the final curtain. Inside the vehicle, silence. Her driver asked gently, Back to the hotel, Miss Chastain? She nodded. Yeah, just drive. As the car pulled away, Jessica stared out the window, watching the city blur by in streaks of gray and gold. Her mind raced, not with anger, but with something deeper, the ache of being misunderstood. How do you defend sincerity to people who don't believe in it? Her phone buzzed. A text from an old friend, another actress she admired. It read, You did good. Don't let her twist your message. Jessica exhaled, closing her eyes. I won't, she whispered. I can't. Meanwhile, in a dim office upstairs, one of the View's producers sat replaying the confrontation over and over. The video views were climbing by the second. The tension, the words, the poise, it was gold for ratings. But behind the success, there was a moral unease. The kind that lingers when real emotion gets turned into entertainment. That night, social media exploded. Hashtags like hashtag Jessica versus Sunny, hashtag The View Clash, and hashtag Moral Showdown trended worldwide. Clips flooded timelines. Fans took sides. Some said Jessica was a symbol of composure under fire. Others accused her of hiding behind eloquence instead of accountability. And in that digital battlefield, one truth became clear. This wasn't just a talk show debate anymore. It was a cultural mirror, reflecting how society devours moral conflict like entertainment. By midnight, Jessica was still awake, scrolling through the noise. One tweet stood out among the chaos. It's always women tearing each other down while men get to walk away clean. She liked it, then locked her phone. The city outside her window was quiet now, but inside her chest, the storm hadn't passed. She knew this moment would follow her. The confrontation wasn't over. It had only changed form. From the studio floor to the court of public opinion. And somewhere out there, Sunny was probably feeling the same unease. The difference was, one of them would soon decide to speak again. And the other might not. Morning sunlight hit the Manhattan skyline like a warning. News outlets were already buzzing, headlines pulsing across every platform. Jessica Chastain and Sunny Hostin face off in heated exchange. Hollywood star walks the moral tightrope. Did the View cross a line? Jessica woke to her phone vibrating relentlessly on the nightstand. Dozens of missed calls. Texts from friends, publicists, directors, some supportive, others cautious. She sat up slowly, her hair messy, her eyes heavy with the weight of what the world had turned into overnight. Dana was already waiting in the suite's living room, laptop open, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, we're drafting something. No, she's not making a statement yet, she said before covering the receiver. Jess, it's everywhere. You need to see this. Jessica wrapped herself in a robe and stepped closer. The video was playing on the screen, her face, her voice, her pause. Sunny's question. Her response. The tension that hung like smoke. But what hit hardest wasn't what she saw. It was the caption beneath the millions of views. Jessica Chastain gets defensive when confronted about her morality. She stared, silent. Dana spoke carefully. We can get ahead of this if you want. Maybe go on Instagram Live, explain your side before everyone defines it for you. Jessica's jaw tightened. Explain what? That I refuse to let someone question my values in front of the world. Dana hesitated. People are divided. They think you're calculated. That you used moral talk as a shield. Jessica laughed under her breath, sharp and hollow. Calculated. That's what women get called when we don't break on cue. She turned away from the screen, her reflection caught in the glass balcony door. I'm not explaining anything yet. I want to see if Sunny even realizes what she did. Across town, Sunny Hostin walked briskly through the ABC corridors, her phone in hand, scrolling through hundreds of messages. Producers, friends, critics. It was chaos. She passed a makeup artist who gave her a nervous smile. Sunny managed a polite nod, but her stomach was tight. In the staff lounge, Whoopi sat reading a newspaper headline about the confrontation. She looked up as Sunny entered. You okay? Sunny dropped her phone on the table, rubbing her temples. Depends who you ask. Social media is a circus right now, Whoopi said. Half the people think you ambushed her. Sunny frowned. I asked her a fair question. She talks about moral courage. I wanted to know what that means when it's personal. Whoopi folded the paper, her voice calm but heavy. There's fair, Sunny, and then there's human. Sometimes those don't line up. Sunny looked down, defensive but thoughtful. She's strong. She can handle it. That's not the point, Whoopi said quietly. You don't ask a question that cuts that deep unless you're ready for the silence afterward. Sunny didn't answer. She just stared at her coffee, replaying Jessica's expression in her mind. The flicker of pain that crossed her face, the composure that followed. She'd seen it before, in guests who smiled through offense just to stay dignified. For the first time, she wondered if she'd gone too far. Later that afternoon, Jessica's name trended again. This time not for the argument, but for what she hadn't said. Fans were demanding a response. Critics accused her of hiding behind silence. Others defended her as a woman unfairly cornered. That evening, she finally broke it. Jessica sat in front of her phone camera, no makeup, her hair pulled back, her voice steady. I've seen what's being said, she began, eyes direct but soft. And I need to say this, not as an actress, but as a person. When women speak about ethics, people often call it performative. But when we stay silent, we're called complicit. That's a no-win equation. What happened yesterday wasn't about politics or ego. It was about respect. Moral accountability is something I believe in deeply. But it doesn't mean allowing someone to question your sincerity in front of millions just to make good television. She paused, taking a breath that trembled slightly. I respect Sunny. I've watched her for years. But respect doesn't mean staying quiet when your integrity is put on trial. The post went viral instantly. Clips of her statement flooded social media. Hashtags flipped sides. Hashtag Stand with Jessica trended. Celebrities chimed in. Actors, activists, even journalists weighing in on whether Sunny had crossed a personal line. Meanwhile, at ABC headquarters, Sunny scrolled through the flood of reactions on her phone. Her face remained composed, but her hand trembled slightly. Sarah Haynes entered the room, phone in hand. Have you seen Jessica's video? Sunny nodded. Yeah. She was measured. Didn't attack you. But people are taking her side hard. Sunny exhaled slowly. Of course they are. She's America's sweetheart with a moral halo. Sarah frowned. Come on. You know that's not fair. Sunny looked up sharply. Neither was her silence. I asked a question that millions wanted to ask. And now I'm the villain because she answered it beautifully. Sarah hesitated. Maybe it's not about what you asked. Maybe it's how you asked it. That stung. Sunny turned away, her reflection sharp in the glass of the window. So now I'm supposed to apologize for doing my job? Sarah's voice was gentle. Maybe not apologize, just remember there's a line between truth and intrusion. Sunny didn't respond, but her silence said enough. That night, Sunny received an unexpected call from an ABC executive. She listened, nodding quietly, saying only a few words. When she hung up, she leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. They wanted her to address the controversy live. Tomorrow. No scripts. No pre-screened questions. Just her, talking to the camera, explaining her side. By morning, the View's studio felt charged. Every chair, every light, every whisper carried the ghost of yesterday's confrontation. Audience members shuffled nervously, clutching their phones, waiting for the moment to begin. Sunny sat at the table, papers in front of her, though she wasn't reading them. Joy cracked a joke to ease the tension, but no one laughed. Whoopi opened the show, her voice steady but solemn. Yesterday's discussion between Sunny and Jessica got a lot of people talking. We believe in tough conversations here, but sometimes they take on a life of their own. Sunny, I know you wanted to say something. The camera zoomed in on Sunny. Her lips parted slightly as she drew a breath. Look, she began, her tone careful, measured. I asked Jessica a hard question because I believe in accountability, not just for others, but for myself. I never intended to make her feel attacked. I respect her deeply. But this is what we do, we ask questions that others avoid. She hesitated, her eyes softening. That said, watching it back, I realized that sometimes the way we seek truth can overshadow the truth itself. And if I came off as harsh or personal, that wasn't my intention. The audience applauded gently. Whoopi gave a small nod. That's fair, Sunny. But the moment was far from resolved. Because just as the show returned from a commercial break, Jessica's tweet appeared on every screen, lighting up timelines once again. It read, "We all make mistakes. What defines us is how we move forward, with empathy, not ego." It wasn't an attack, but everyone could feel who it was meant for. Sunny read it during the break, her eyes narrowing. Empathy, not ego, she repeated under her breath. And for the first time, her composure cracked just a little. Because beneath all the words, beneath the ratings and reactions, lay the question neither woman could escape. When does holding someone accountable become crossing a personal boundary? And who gets to decide the difference? The studio was no longer a talk show set. It was a battleground of unspoken truths. Jessica Chastain sat upright in her chair, her posture calm but her energy sharp. Across from her, Sunny Hostin's confident expression wavered just slightly, the air around them charged with the tension of words that had already crossed too many lines. The audience remained frozen, unsure whether to applaud or hold their breath. Cameras rolled, capturing the subtle tremor in Sunny's voice as she tried to regain control. "Jessica," she said, forcing a measured tone, "I think you're misunderstanding the question. I wasn't attacking your integrity." Jessica tilted her head, eyes steady and unflinching. "You weren't asking a question," she replied softly. "You were making a judgment." That single word, judgment, hung in the air like thunder. The hosts exchanged wary glances. Joy Behar leaned slightly forward, sensing the storm wasn't over. Sarah Haynes looked toward the producers off camera, as if searching for a cue to intervene. Sunny straightened her papers, trying to compose herself. "I think as public figures, we all face scrutiny. And when someone claims to represent moral integrity..." Jessica cut in, her voice low but sharp enough to slice through the silence. "Moral integrity isn't a performance. It's not for show, not something you parade around so people applaud you for being good. It's the quiet decisions, the things you do when no one's watching." That line hit hard. Even the audience murmured, a ripple of surprise moving through the crowd. Jessica's tone wasn't angry. It was heartbreakingly sincere, and that made it even more devastating. She wasn't fighting to win. She was fighting to be understood. Sunny blinked rapidly, caught off guard by the rawness of Jessica's words. For the first time that day, she looked small, not humiliated but humbled. Joy tried to lighten the moment. "Well, Jessica," she said with a forced laugh, You could teach a masterclass in conviction. But Jessica didn't smile. She simply turned to Joy and said quietly, "Conviction only matters if you're willing to lose for it." The audience gasped. Even the stage lights seemed dimmer for a moment, as if the show itself needed to breathe. Sunny leaned forward, her voice trembling slightly. "So, are you saying that people like me, people who question, are somehow less moral?" Jessica took a long pause before answering. "I'm saying that sometimes we confuse criticism with clarity. We tear others down because it's easier than facing what we've ignored in ourselves." Sunny swallowed hard. For a brief second, her expression softened. There was pain in her eyes, not anger but reflection. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. The silence that followed was heavy and profound. The audience didn't know if they were witnessing an ending or a revelation. Jessica's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I've made mistakes. I've been cruel when I thought I was being honest. But I've learned that morality isn't about who's right. It's about who's willing to grow." That final line seemed to pierce through the studio's noise. Even Sunny nodded faintly, conceding not defeat, but understanding. It wasn't about winning anymore. It was about truth. The moderator stepped in, clearly flustered. "Well, that was powerful," she said, her voice trembling. "Let's take a quick break." But as the show went to commercial, the cameras kept rolling, unintentionally capturing the moment Jessica and Sunny looked at each other, both quiet, both changed. It was the kind of silence that said more than any scripted line ever could. After the show, clips of the exchange went viral within hours. Social media ignited with debates, some praising Jessica for her poise and authenticity, others defending Sunny's right to challenge her guests. Hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag Chastain speaks truth. Hashtag Sunny crossed the line. Hashtag the View meltdown. News anchors dissected the moment frame by frame. Commentators called it the most human exchange ever seen on daytime TV. Fans of both women took sides, while psychologists on morning shows analyzed the emotional layers of the confrontation. But beyond the noise, something deeper resonated. Viewers began sharing their own stories. Times when they'd been misunderstood for standing by their values, times they'd felt pressured to stay quiet. Jessica's calm defiance had struck a chord that went far beyond celebrity gossip. 3 days later, Jessica addressed it on her Instagram. Sitting alone in a dimly lit room, she recorded a short video. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were tired. "I didn't plan to get emotional," she said. "I just think we've forgotten how to disagree without trying to destroy each other. I have nothing but respect for Sunny, and I hope our conversation made people think, not divide." The post hit millions of views within hours. Sunny Hostin later responded on her own platform, acknowledging that the interview pushed buttons on both sides, but added that she admired Jessica's sincerity. The tension between them hadn't evaporated, but it had evolved into something strangely human. By the end of the week, The View released an official statement framing the confrontation as a spirited discussion about authenticity and boundaries. But audiences knew it was more than that. It was a rare, unfiltered moment. Two strong women confronting not just each other, but their reflections. And for talk narrative viewers watching the full story unfold, it wasn't about celebrity drama anymore. It was about how easily moral lines blur when pride and truth collide. As the screen fades to black, the narrator's voice returns, quiet yet commanding. What happens when standing for your truth means standing alone? Jessica Chastain didn't walk off that stage with applause. She walked away with peace, and sometimes that's the loudest victory of all. A brief pause. Then the voice sharpens, inviting the audience directly. If you felt this story the way millions did, if you believe authenticity still matters in a world of judgment, share your thoughts in the comments below. Whose side do you stand on? And make sure you're subscribed to Talk Narrative for more raw, emotional, and unforgettable stories from the world's most powerful conversations. The outro music swells, fading under the echo of that final question, one that lingers long after the screen goes dark.